All right. Hello, and thanks for tuning in to this webinar on all about inspiration. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because inspiration and motivation can be such a delicate thing to cultivate and maintain. Because finding and keeping inspiration is vital for a successful and for a fulfilling career, I created this presentation for students and professionals alike. So in the next 90 or so minutes, we will check in with several photographers, all who have managed to inspire me throughout the years. My hope is that we can come away with a few of their secrets. Now, before we get too deep into it, I would like to thank Mac on Campus once again for partnering with us on this important series for photo students. I'm a user, many of their brands like X-Rite, Pocket Wizard, and ProPhoto. And I continue to admire their dedication to photography and education. So during the past few years, we've developed, an absolute ton of knowledge about what works and what doesn't for a growing photography business. And the team at Mac on Campus have been really actively involved in photo education programs. So it really does make sense for us to join efforts on this series. So we're grateful for their opportunity and their partnership. Now, today's presentation on inspiration is the second part of a 5-part series. The idea for this series started as a single blog post published in June 2010 titled "The Top 11 Things Photographers Wish They Learned in Photo School." And the response to that story was really incredible. And it made us realize that there was a real need for this kind of educational resource. And now, inspiration, it's a very personal thing, and for each person, it's different. In the course of my life, many people have had an inspiring effect on me, and the people listed here are just a few of them. Because inspiration is so personal, the only way I can describe it is through my own eyes. As you'll see, I grew up in the photojournalism world, and what we are going to talk about today will apply to any type of photographer, not just the photojournalist. Now, at any time during this presentation, should you have any questions, just speak up. Use the little question box found inside the GoToWebinar control panel. And Andrew, there's Andrew, he'll answer them. He's the person behind the PhotoShelter Twitter account. And if you happen to be watching this from the recorded archive, you can send questions to us at PhotoShelter at Twitter or on Facebook.com. at facebook.com/photoshelter. Now, before I get started too far, I'd like to talk about who I am and where I've been, and I've created a little bar chart to do that. A little bar chart of my life. The purple years was my youth in Long Island, New York. Then I went to college at RIT and Ohio University. Worked at a whole bunch of newspapers, mostly in the Midwest, in Michigan primarily. Then I decided I needed to leave newspapers to follow my dreams and go into what I thought was the wave of the future, which was CD-ROMs. Notice how small that is. And then, of course, I went into the internet, was part of the team that started the first Chicago Tribune website, then left Chicago, went to San Francisco, joined a company called Quokka Sports. We did large-scale sports entertainment websites like NBCOlympics.com. and Final4.net. And after the .com meltdown happened, I had some time off, so a bunch of friends and I started a sports website called sportshooter.com. And then 3 years after that, we founded PhotoShelter. When I think about my own inspiration, I can remember back when I made my first really important career decision, and that was way back in 1984 when I was in high school, working for the local supermarket. I worked in the produce department, and this picture of me here is actually in the back room of the produce department. And I used to do things like stacking lettuce, washing green beans, cutting watermelons, and other similarly fun things. Even though I was in the produce department, my true love was photography. I mean, I just was consumed by it back in high school. And although the supermarket job paid really well, it was a union shop, so I got paid ridiculously well to stack lettuce. I couldn't help but feel like I wasn't getting anywhere in the business that I really wanted to be in, which was photography. So one day I just walked into work and I quit. I ended up taking a dramatic pay cut and worked for peanuts at a local newspaper, but it was the first time that I ever followed my passion. And from that moment on, I promised myself that I would never do anything that wasn't truly that I wasn't truly passionate about, and that still holds true today. And there are times when I remind myself this over and over again. Let's talk a little bit about inspiration and what the difference is between motivation and inspiration. Now, motivation generally comes from external sources. It's a reward-based force that compels people to do something. It gets you out of bed in the morning. It makes you want to continue to improve your craft. It helps you turn ideas into actions. But inspiration is different because it comes from an internal source. It's what comes before motivation, and usually after a good, hard, honest look inside of yourself. When a photographer sees something visually fresh and new, for example, they may take an inward look and tell themselves, hey, I can do that, or I can do that even better. And for the sake of career longevity, it's important to understand what inspires and motivates you, so you can make sure that you're getting plenty of it, and you're being honest with yourself. For me and many others, inspiration can come from being a unique individual. Being respected and admired for your own personal vision can create a euphoric feeling that can become quite addicting. It's also important to take chances and try new things and trust your judgment. It's important to feel like you're progressing and feel like you're innovating. And most people in life are afraid to take chances, and as a result, they rarely end up inspiring themselves, much less anyone else. An inward inspiration is the feeling of pride and confidence that you get when you've taken a chance, broken new ground and it paid off. At one point in my life, I had problems with self-confidence, but I forced myself out of my comfort zone and took a few chances. And after a few wins, I started to build my confidence and found that I was capable of inspiring myself. And finally, if you are capable of inspiring yourself, you're already inspiring others, believe it or not. People definitely notice. When you're confident and marching to the beat of your own drummer, taking chances, being creative, and living a full life, people see this, and they want the same for themselves. So everyone loves to feel inspired, and by starting with yourself, you can help others too. Now let's talk about your passions. It's the stuff inside of you that gets you really motivated. Now, by following your passion, you will have more natural incentive to get out of bed, to follow your dreams, and make a difference in your life and the world. You really can't go wrong because you already know that you enjoy it, so your job won't really feel like work. So you already have people that you know that have a shared similar passion or are already working within that field of interest. So following your passion could give you a head start, a good direction, and a boost to your career. Now, when you have the courage to follow your passion, the positive effects run off into other areas of your life. As long as you're being honest with yourself, by following your true passion, you should expect to be a happier, more positive person. I've heard that following your passion, hopes and dreams is for the really young and for the really old, both of which is true. When you're just getting started, the world is yours and anything is possible. When you're older and retired, you finally have the chance to stop doing that job that you never really liked in the first place, and you can concentrate on your true passions. However, I think it's for everyone. You can follow your passions at any time in your life. I've certainly changed directions several times, and I've never regretted it each time. In fact, if you can combine multiple passions and channel that into your career, you're setting yourself up with a truly amazing and unique experience. And one photographer who is doing exactly that is Corey Rich. Now, Corey has a very successful career as a photographer because he has combined adventure photography and his love of the outdoors. He's actually a certified climbing expert and is considered an authority in the adventure world. One thing that always strikes me as with his adventure photography is that you see things like people doing crazy things like climbing a dangerous rock wall hundreds of feet high, and then you have to realize that Corey has to be as good, if not better, as a climber than the person he's photographing, because he's already there on the scene, out in front of that climber, or like right next to them, but he's loaded down with cameras doing his job. So he's based in Lake Tahoe, and he is a partner in the Aurora Photo Agency. And I love talking to Corey because he's a really smart guy, and he has a great head for business and marketing. And he's also really nice, kind, and generous. And so I figured let's check in with Corey and talk about the concept of combining your passions. Okay, we have Corey Rich on the line. Corey's based out of South Lake Tahoe, California. But right now he's dialing in from some hotel room in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Corey.
Hey, Grover. How are you?
Doing well. I'm really glad you could make it with us here. I want to talk to you about combining your passions to inspire yourself. Okay? Here's my first question. First of all, an observation. You have managed to combine your two great loves, photography and outdoors, to form a career. And this is a goal that most people have, but can never quite get there. So what do you think is the path to making this happen?
You know, I like to say that I never intentionally set out to build a career that combined my two passions. I mean, I was sort of a kid running aimlessly through the field, and I simultaneously was introduced to photography and the adventure world. And it turned out I loved them both. It turned out I loved being outside. I loved this feeling of being in a wild place and pushing myself mentally and physically, specifically with rock climbing. But I also wanted to document these weekend adventures. And I quickly realized that simply borrowing my father's DSLR, or I guess it was pre-DSLR, it was just an SLR, that was just the tool. The camera was just the tool. I actually needed to learn how to use that tool so that it could communicate messages. And so these parallel passions were born. And what's really happened is over the next 20 years, I've spent my entire career trying to fulfill both passions, which is spend as much time as I possibly can outside in adventure environments, and at the same time really trying to document those adventurous environments and those wild places, so that I can share them with those folks that aren't spending time outside. And I think the reason that I've found this niche in the adventure world, documenting the adventure world with photography and now with motion, is because I'm an expert, because I have so much passion and so much love and so much expertise in this world of adventure. I'm an authority on this subject matter. Even when you take photography away from it, I have a lot of facts in my head, and I know a lot of locations and a lot of the right people and the history and the nuance of the sports and then when you apply photography to being an expert, you really put yourself into a unique category. All of a sudden, when you think about how many great photographers there are, there's a lot. And then you think about how many great adventurers there are, there's a lot. But then it narrows the list when you say, but now there's two qualifiers. We need a guy that's actually, he's an expert at adventure and he's an expert at photography. And so the pool gets smaller. And I think I fit into that pool. I mean, I'm certain that I fit into that smaller bucket of individuals. And I feel really fortunate that I fit into that pool. And I think that same application, you could apply that same rule or methodology to almost anything along with photography. I mean, if you are absolutely passionate about photographing animals, and it turns out you have a background in biology and you know a lot about animals and you know how to work with animals and handle animals, and your skill set within the world of photography is comparable to your knowledge base in the animal world, you've now put yourself into a very unique, special situation. And then I think there's that personal satisfaction of not only does that provide for a career or the business opportunities, but also an enormous amount of personal satisfaction, because you're spending most of your working hours photographing or documenting things that you actually care about, which at the end of the day, that, in my book, that goes a long way.
Yeah, that's a really great situation to be in, and I think it's a goal for a lot of people. Now, I want to do a top 10 list with you. I've been doing this for everybody. So if I were to ask you to come up with a top 10 list of non-photography things that will end up inspiring your photography, what would you put on that list?
Ooh, that's good. Well, I think I'm going to have to do this top 10 list in no particular order. Um, and it's going to be a bit stream of consciousness, but I think this is very ingrained in my belief system, what I'm about to say on this list. So I would say number one, in terms of looking for inspiration, you've got to be interested in the world around you. You need to find things around you that you're passionate about and interested in that are not photography, not talking about cameras, not talking about the business of photography, but the things you're going to actually photograph when you're using your camera. So have friends that are not photographers and not in the photo industry. We're all members of this club, which is photography, visual storytelling. But it's really fascinating when you sit down at a bar and you start talking to the guy next to you that comes from a completely different world. And the key is to open your ears, to actually be listening to what that individual has to say. I guess I said this in a different way, but don't get hung up on the business. The business of photography is not what people fall in love with, or at least very few people fall in love with the business of photography. You fall in love with the creativity and your ability to communicate. And however you need to do it, remind yourself that it's about the creativity, the communication, not the business. I find that donating time actually to causes that you believe in also are really helpful. I donate a lot of time to conservation organizations. I sit on the board of directors of a few, and I find that by being involved with these organizations, it helps keep perspective on what's really important in life. What are these bigger issues beyond just that 1/1000th of a second? Um, it helps if you fall in love with another human being. I have got to say that my wife provides more insight and perspective and inspiration than probably anything else on this list. And every day it's incredibly refreshing to spend time with a person that I care so much about. Having a pet, I mean, some of this really sounds cliche, but I think it's true. I think I can vouch for both my wife and I that our dog brings an enormous amount of satisfaction and inspiration. I mean, mostly envy, actually. I look at the dog and I think, how can life just be so great? Like, the look on my dog's face never changes. The world always looks fantastic to our dog. But it inspires me. I kind of take a step back and I think, it's pretty good outside. It doesn't matter that it's raining. It doesn't matter what's going wrong. If I can put on those same lenses that the dog is wearing, life is fantastic all the time. Travel. I think being outside of your comfort zone, or at least I can speak for myself, it sort of plays that same role. It does two things. You realize that the world is so much larger than you can imagine, and that everyone doesn't see the world the same way that you do, and that's valuable. I also find that helping others, and when I say helping others, this is different than donating time to a nonprofit or a cause that you believe in. It's donating time to younger photographers or photographers that have questions. It's kind of amazing when you sit and have a conversation and look at someone else's work and provide feedback. Sometimes it helps you really step back and think about what you're doing, and allows you to sort of see the forest through the trees. So make yourself available for helping others. And maybe this should have been number one, but embrace storytelling, and that's both listening to stories and telling stories. We live in such a rich world in terms of just amazing things that happen, sometimes simple, sometimes complex. You've got to be willing to listen. And one of my favorite things on the planet is to sit around a campfire or sit on bar stools and swap tales. Because in the end, that's what photography is about. It's about communicating. So it's like muscle memory. You've got to practice that. You've got to practice sharing stories. And obviously, maybe one of the most important, and this really coincides or fits well with the practice storytelling, is drink plenty of wine, beer, or tequila, because it's sort of like oiling the storytelling muscles. And if you don't put oil in the car, it's very hard to drive the car. If you don't oil the storytelling machine, it's hard to actually do great storytelling.
Well, I'll drink to that. That's for sure. All right. Well, thanks, Corey. I really appreciate your time, and I hope whatever it is that you're doing in Atlanta proves to be fruitful.
Thanks, Grover.
So
I
thanks.
appreciate it.